It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight. And as you can see, the title of this presentation is Pathways, the Big Picture. That's what we're going to be exploring tonight. The event format is going to be, first of all, sort of an introduction, if you will, of what we're talking about with this big picture concept as a way that we can grow members. Secondly, this is really going to be the meat of the presentation, which is interaction and targeted questions using breakout rooms and then follow-up collaboration in the main room. And then finally, at the end, it's going to be more of an open Q&A. What I am going to say is we did have a couple of questions submitted in advance. Some people have to leave a little bit early, so I'm literally going to start with that. So I'm going to just jump away from my own structure just to make sure that we provide the best value that we can for everybody here. The big picture. We're defining it as the why behind what we do as Toastmasters. Now that still sounds pretty wide in application, so I want to break that down just a little further in terms of the benefits. First of all, I think we can discover what is most important and meaningful with this understanding the why behind the what. Secondly, it helps us to think strategically as a vice president education, or if you're not a vice president education club officer, just you as a member. I think there are some really excellent benefits. We're going to talk about those. And then finally, the ability to help even more fellow members. What do I mean by that? So often when we first join, unless we've been through a very specific situation, we think we can only help people with just that. But with this big picture, we start to sort of recognize patterns and like, okay, well, I've been through this, but it's very similar to what they're sharing. So I think this can be very beneficial in this way. The interactive targeted questions as described. We're going to be doing breakout rooms. There's really not a lot you have to do regarding the breakout rooms. It all just happens automatically. It's 3 minutes for each question that I'm going to propose. And then I'm going to ask if you would choose a representative from your breakout room to share what you have talked about. And we're going to be doing the same breakout rooms, but I would encourage you to use a different representative each time. And then we'll come back to the main room for a collaboration. But before we get further into that, I mentioned that we had some questions that came in advance, and I really want to actually touch on those first, very briefly, to make sure that we're servicing those that are here the best that we can. Some people have to leave a little bit early. So the first question, and I left the names out because I didn't ask in advance if I could use your name. So the first one is they want to know the best way to capture members' path level status, as many themselves don't seem to know, and a good VPE should be able to help them move forward through the program. What I'm going to share there is I have found that Club Central is an excellent place to go for this, and I'm going to be rather specific with this. The person that asked this, do you feel comfortable interacting with me live?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Yep.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, Victoria. And big hand for Victoria do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
I'm president of a newly chartered club. We're about 3 months old, an permanently online club, and I'm involved in a couple of other clubs as well, but that's been taking most of my time.
Excellent.
With Val. We're co-sponsors.
Yes. Wow, that's wonderful to have you both. Thank you. The way that I would answer that, and I wonder if you can give me feedback if you'd like more or just further thoughts. When we go to Club Central and click on the member roster, have you been into Club Central much yet at this point, Victoria?
Yeah, I have, and I can tell that each person has got a designation. So I might be a presentation mastery 5 or 4 or something. Yes. Doesn't give you the detail of where I've been before that, or
Right.
it's, and then it doesn't kind of relate. We just had a couple of incidents with a member who sort of came very quickly and left our club, and he was a bit odd, and he said he was a DTM. He must have been a Toastmaster because he needed to be a dual member to join our club, so he could provide that. But we could see no evidence of him having done anything. He had no particular expertise in our view. And there was no way we could find that information anywhere.
Okay, so I'd love to continue. Believe me, there's more we can do. I'm trying to make sure it's fundamental and not random. So that's the first place I would go just for general interest. If you're kind of wondering what status your members are, that's the first place. Secondly, if they know how to get it around in their own profile, as soon as they log in, they can find their own education awards if they want to find every single one. That's the other thing I was going to say is if they know how to print their own awards report, then that could be a way to really find that. If they're not familiar, maybe a Zoom screen share with them driving could help with that. The other thing is you can also go to your daily reports. You don't have to actually log in. So you would go to Leadership Central, and then I'm trying to remember precisely how to get there. But if you've been to the daily reports, you can click on this year's education achievements as well as the archive. So those are some other places that you can go. Does that get you down the street with that, Victoria?
It'll sort out my afternoon when I come back from my meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, you bet. Great, thank you. Next question I want to jump into. Where did the speeches focusing, on things like vocal variety, sort of skill, vocal variety, gestures, that sort of things, where are they? And I will say that does the person that asked that want to jump in, or I could just answer it generally if that's not a comfortable situation, which it's totally fine. I'm just going to answer it more generally. Level 1, matter of fact, I need to go to the Pathways Learning Center with you guys anyway very soon, and we'll just simply do that now. Just for the benefit of those that have never been here before, one way to get to the Pathways Learning Center is to see my signature. It's at the bottom of my signature every time you've gotten an email from me. But beyond that, if you go to our district website, it's just d7toastmasters.org. If you go to the third tab over Pathways, you can click on Pathways Learning Center, PLC, if you want to remember it, and that acronym, Pathways Learning Center. And I just want to show you something that could help with those skill sets that you're describing, which is a little newer. Level 1 as of October 27th, this came out. And as the way that the Pathways Learning Center is set up, it starts at the beginning, goes into intermediate, gets more advanced as we go. Get down the page, we just have one page. There's a lot on here, as you can see. But it's in the resources section. And it's considered an intermediate/advanced level tool and reference material. So just for the benefit of the question about vocal variety, that sort of thing, in the new level 1, if we were to look at this, these are some of the projects, and I think they're going to fit some of the skill sets that you were wanting to look at. So the icebreaker, that's still the same. Writing a speech with purpose, if you are familiar with the old manuals, the competent communication manual, I found a parallel between get to the point. So that seems to be influence in that regard. So you're learning to, write a speech with purpose. The both skills that you were talking about, vocal variety and body language, you called them gestures, which I would agree with. This is a project that you'd probably be interested in, Introduction to Vocal Variety and Body Language. And then, of course, we have our evaluation and feedback. That's a quick answer. There's a lot more we could get into, but whoever that was, I hope that was helpful. And again, that's the way to get into that is to select or purchase a path at this point, anytime after October 27th of last year. The final question that we're going to look at before getting into the presentation. Leadership roles and pathways are so confusing. How do I know which ones to pick for whatever? Now, I do have some thoughts on this, but I want to really streamline. And I happen to know the person that asked that question would probably like to put it in their own words to share it with us. And I wonder if David Shehorn, our Zoom master today, would like to speak for about 60 seconds on this.
Well, I may not require 60 seconds, but there are only 2 paths out of the 11 that do not require leadership. So when Toastmasters says where leaders are made, so 9 paths out of 11, there's some leadership in there. And particularly when it gets to level 4 and 5, the required projects become more involved, and some of them require 6 months. So before you pick that path, you want to do your research and make sure that you have the time to commit to that particular project. So 6 months is a long time, not as long as being an area director or district director, but because that's a 1-year commitment. But it's important to look ahead before you pick that next path. You know, the first path you pick should be one that's familiar to you. You know, it's one that you are comfortable with. The second path, that's where your adventure comes in. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Excellent. Thank you. Big hand to all the folks that asked questions in advance. I hope we were able to help with that and you all find it interesting. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay, first question I want to ask everybody. How do you log and plan your Pathways speeches, either as a member or if you are your club's Vice President Education for all of your members? So again, I'm going to repeat the question because I'm about to send you off into the breakout rooms so you can all discuss this for about 3 minutes as we talked about earlier. How do you log and plan Pathway speeches, either as a member or if you are your club's Vice President Education? We're going to head to that breakout room for 3 minutes. Nothing you need to know about that except just go, enjoy, have a good time. It's all going to happen automatically. And we're going to go right now. Wonderful. Welcome back, everybody. My first question, and this is going to be for anybody that wants to volunteer, is, or I should say the first question we all explored was, how do you log and plan Pathway speeches, either as a member or as your club's VPE? Let's hear from you. Who would like to volunteer? Lori, who has their hand up?
None that I see, but I could. Oh, yes, I do. Robert, Bob,
Okay.
and PJ. Bob
Okay.
first and PJ second.
We had 2 people speak in my group. They asked me to take notes, so that's what I did.
Excellent.
One was a VPE and one was a member. And the VPE said that they keep a Word doc on their own computer to track the information about who's given what speeches.
Yes.
And to provide feedback to the club through that method. And the member said that they collect evaluation forms and they keep track of that on their own computer. That helps them to keep track of where they are. And so one is evaluation focused and the other one is speech completion focused. But it's all done on their own personal computer. They're not using any tools except you know, if the Pathways interface to know where you are in your speaking process. Nothing fancy.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Big hand for Bob. And PJ, how about you?
Okay, 3 of us got to speak briefly. 3 minutes goes very fast. Most
It's
of our
better than the
conversation-
last one for 1.5 minutes.
Yes, most of us said that we plan our speeches by having something in mind that we want to say, and then we go look for a project where we can fit it in. And occasionally I will have a project that I need to complete, and I'll think of a topic that I can put into that. So we come at it from both directions. Then I also mentioned in our club, we use Free Toast Host.
Yes.
people put in their project and their speech title and their introduction and all of that. And then you can generate these lovely reports that document which speeches people have made. The tricky part is if somebody gives a hot seat speech, you have to then go back and either they have to go in or the VPE has to go in and be sure to enter that information. Otherwise it's missing, it's not there. So if you want to have the valid report, you do need to backfill that information. Now, I've seen spreadsheets where people keep track of which projects they've completed in which of the paths, because most of us are like that. We multitask with multi-paths. I'm currently, I think I've got 4 of them open or 3 of them. And I don't have that spreadsheet. I should do that because I honestly have no idea where the heck I am in most of my paths. So I need to work on organizing it better. That's my own personal problem. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, PJ. Very good. You might even hear a little bit more about those spreadsheets in just a second. Great. David, looks like you have your hand up.
I do, but I just volunteered myself. But one of our members actually belongs to 6 clubs. I belong to 3, but we have multiple paths going on in some cases. But a lot of times it's just kind of plodding through when you're just getting started, and you have to just keep track of one path. So it's challenging before it all fits in. And at some point, somewhere around level 2, when you're finishing, it kind of fits in to a pattern. And then once you discover the pattern, it works a whole lot easier. And I think Nushanath was the one who belonged to 6 clubs, and she keeps a Google spreadsheet. I keep mine in an Excel spreadsheet, and that's the only way I would ever be able to keep track of it.
Excel, and the other one was a shared Google, you said?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Google. Very good. Excellent. Big hand for David. Thank you, David. Wonderful. I don't see further comments, so I'm going to jump in and I guess really support some of what was said and maybe add even a little bit more. So the additional that I wanted to add to that is something that we have at the District 7 Pathways Learning Center, and it is now called the Member and VPE Speech Tracking Log. Let's take a look at that. This is brand new. You wouldn't have seen it because it was just finished yesterday, actually, based upon some excellent questions that we had. It's in this section that we showed you how to navigate to, the intermediate and advanced level tools and reference materials. So as we scroll down just a little bit in this, Toastmasters Member and VPE Pathway Speech Tracking Log. Now I'm going to do this so that you can see how to do it. I'm going to click on download, and then I need to re-screen share to bring in the actual document. And you probably would select save, but in this case, I'm going to open it so that you can see what I'm doing. And why would you want to save it? Because what you would do once you see this spreadsheet is then you would share this. Someone had mentioned this on Google, not Docs these days. I think it's called Google Sheets. That's what it is. Yes, the spreadsheets. And you can decide on your own permissions, that sort of thing. But here's the document, should you choose to take a look at it. This is a collaborative process. Most of this first part, I'm really just going to give credit to David Shehorn, the one we just heard from. He helped me with the design. I just sort of polished it up so the rest of us can understand it. He has got a wonderful engineering mind, and I tried to be somewhat of a translator for that. But just briefly, there are the speeches, and for someone that just like to kind of type it in all the way across, this is for you. You type in your date, when was it actually completed? I just added that recently because for the planning part, right, you can put your date in advance, but it's confusing. Is it completed or not? So that's why we added completed. Each one of these, many of these will have down arrows, and you can click, either yes or no in this case. You type in your speech title. The path is also got a down arrow if you're not sure. What path am I in? It's all right there. You can select. Only the levels that are appropriate are here as well. Project name, all the projects are listed. Something that I just added recently is even with the evaluation and feedback, some of you may know there are 3 presentations that took place. So each one you can now select individually, and a few other things like that. I'll let you play there. The second page is, as it states here, you're not going to edit this spreadsheet worksheet. This is the information that other worksheets in here will draw from. So this is a little bit more explanatory, shall we say. This is what it looks like if you are someone that wants to look at your whole path. This is really from the member perspective. So again, here, it's a down arrow with all the projects. This R, what that is, it designates, is it required or is it elective? So R is required, and then otherwise it would be an elective, like in this case, for example. Project name, title, completion date. Now, here's the new one. Oh, by the way, if you want to do multiple paths, if you're using this for yourself, you just simply create another spreadsheet and duplicate it over to the next one, which is kind of what I did as an example. But here's the new one. This is for Vice President Education Club officers. Really wanted to keep it simple. I've received other documents that have macros and flashing lights and everything else, and it's really fun and wonderful. It was a little overwhelming to me, so I just made a more of a simple version. I was influenced by District 48 has sort of a document, and I drew from there and just modified it. But you can see here, you type in the member. On the left, we have the down arrows, of course, with all the paths. And this lays out all of your projects in a horizontal fashion. So, for example, John Doe in this line, he bought his path before October 27th. So therefore, you might notice he did his icebreaker. Now, presumably, as a VPE, you know the names of these presentations, or you can refer back to one of the other spreadsheets. But trying not to be everything for everybody, I really had to say, what do we need to include on here and still make it one sheet? So that's why I did project number 1, and it goes across here. The level is up here. So he bought his path prior to that date. So that's all he needed was researching and presenting. And then he got his award. So we typed in PM1, Presentation Mastery. That's what PM stands for. Now, Jane Doe bought her path or selected her path after 1027. So that's why she didn't do this one, because that's an old project in that level. And she filled in there. And then she got her LD one. Now, John Doe II is very industrious. Matter of fact, he's done the entire path. We get a chance to see what John did. So all you do is you literally just type in X. That just tells you that it's done. It couldn't get any simpler in that way to just see this representation. We type in the award each time. And as we go across, you might notice in level 3, there are roles that you also have to fulfill. That's why we did that specifically. Speech evaluator, Toastmaster, topics master. You just put in your X and your awards accordingly. And then going across, and we even did the path completion, reflect on your path. So technically you can get your level 5 before you've done this project. So that's why it's designed this way. I hope that that was helpful. It was a lot of fun making it. And if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to entertain those right now or move on to the next question. Any questions on that? Kristen, it looks, I see your hand up.
Oh yeah, that was my physical hand rather than, I forgot the icon down there. Yes, it sounded like you said on that last display of the spreadsheet that some of them can go away. You said the Jane Doe did something couldn't do the earlier one because it went away, or somehow you can't go to an older path. How?
Yes, let me, I sort of went by rather quickly with that. A lot of this just sort of happened behind the scenes. It wasn't incredibly publicized, shall we say, but on October 27th, a modification to your path purchases or selections took place, where level 1 had a change, because a lot of members were wanting more skills to take place, like the vocal variety, body language. And the way that it works is if you selected a path on the 27th of October or after, there's nothing that you personally have to do as a member. Nothing's going to change. There's no switcheroo that they pull out or anything. It's just a matter of when did you purchase it. How could I say it? It's, you know how you might, if you like to play like a video game or something, if you purchased a game on a given date in the past, that's it. There's no updates, there's no other things on there. But if you purchased it again at the store, you're going to have a different version. It's still the same game, but you're going to get different features. Does that help with that perspective? I'm sorry I went a little quick on that before.
But it wasn't enough where somebody bothered to record it. They couldn't just say that was the first one. There's such a big difference that they needed to call them before and after.
Oh, so this is so that I can keep track. For example, I have members that love being at the club. They don't do a lot of speeches. So I have plenty of members in my club that have selected paths prior to October 27th, and therefore they're not going to know anything about this whole new curriculum. But yet I still want to know where they're at in their progress of their speeches. So that allows me to say, oh, he did researching and presenting level 1, which was the old curriculum, but then the other person that purchased it after the 27th of October, I'm going to record that differently because this is his path that he actually is on. He's not on the old path. Oh, looks like.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Great question. Eldred, you had your hand up next.
Oh, yes, Dave. I noticed the spreadsheet that you displayed is in an open office format. Is it possible that that can be downloaded in a format that Excel can use?
Yes. I am an open office user, but I suspect that actually I haven't heard feedback otherwise. In other words, people that have the Microsoft product seem to be able to download it, and it's sort of smart enough that it just makes that change accordingly. It gives you you can use it in open office format, but usually by the time you save it, which of course you would, right? That's the whole purpose of it. Then it would say, would you like to save it in XLS format or something of that nature?
Okay.
Great. And please download it. I'm looking for all kinds of feedback on that. It's literally hot off the press. Last night, 3, 4 a.m., something like that. So yes. And then a quick one with David Shehorn.
The research and presenting was a required project in level 1. Now it's an elective project in level 3.
Yes.
So that's where it went to, and it's one of my favorite projects, researching and presenting.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Big hand for everybody contributing, because that really helps getting that clarification. Thank you. We probably won't be able to get to all the questions, so we'll have to do the big picture part 2, I think. But we're going to jump in. We're going to try and get a little further with our program. Second question for you. How would you recommend choosing a path? Now, David Shehorn did refer to this a little bit, but we're going to give you some more perspective on that, or hear from you some ideas. How would you recommend choosing a path? We're going to go to the breakout room for 3 minutes, same as we did before. You'll be brought back automatically. And let's get ready to go right now. Are you ready? Buckle up. Here we go. Wonderful. Well, we are back. The question, and we're going a mile a minute, is basically, how do you recommend choosing a path? And we want to hear from you. And I believe we have several people with their hands up. Lori, who's first? I'll let you choose for us.
Kristen is first, please.
Great.
Hi.
Kristen. Yes, please.
This is Kristen, and
Great.
our group had a couple, 2 or 3 answers. How do you recommend choosing a path? 2 of the people strongly recommended going through the assessment first.
Yes.
Somebody else discussed it with their president, and they chose based on that. And somebody else looked at a printout of the assessment and chose one that way.
Wonderful. Very succinct, very actionable. Thank you. Big hand for Kristen. And is it Bob that's next, Laurie?
Bob is next.
Okay, we're going for the brownie points. Our advice is to go to PLC.
Big hand for Bob. Thank you, Bob.
I don't know what that is. PLC and brownies.
Oh, please, would you elaborate,
Well,
Bob?
PLC is the Pathways Learning Center, which is what we're learning all about. Brownie points are extra points you get for doing something really cool.
And parenthetically, that the teacher or presenter likes. Yes.
It's like shining an apple for the teacher.
Thank you. Big hand for Bob. And who's next, Laurie?
Well, actually, I wanted to call upon somebody in my group if they want to speak,
Great.
but I won't put any pressure on them. We had just a great group, and we just call ourselves the rock stars. You know, we're just a group of party animals in our group. So Joan or Elizabeth, would you like to speak?
We really like the assessment.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we get really a couple of times that we really wanted that one. Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Big hand for Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
One
Right.
thing, one thing that we also said in our group too is that we just, after the assessment, then when we picked the path, then we just looked at other paths and kind of what we felt like, what catered to what we wanted to do.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree with that. Getting that big picture, shall we say, perspective. Yes. Thank you. And it looks like we have one more from Eldred. Is that right, Laurie?
That is correct.
Great.
One person in my group recommended that we ask the new member what it is they join Toastmasters for, what they want to get out of Toastmasters, and then use that as a means of guiding them to help them see the path that best fits their reason for joining.
I like that. That's very subtle. If I understand the implication, whoever, in fact, that new member is asking might have some facility in understanding all 11 paths and be able to put that together with what the member needs. Am I correct on that? That's what you might be recommending?
That's what I understand.
I think that is a wonderful growth opportunity for all involved. Thank you, Eldred. Big hand for Eldred. It looks like we have one more contributor here. Richard, is that right, Laurie?
That is correct.
Great.
David in our group, let's see, am I muted or I think I'm there? In our group, David recommended that we should not be afraid to take the assessment over and over again for different pathways.
Yes.
But he seemed to have bottomless pockets because he was subscribed to multiple pathways, and most of us haven't been able to do that.
I like the way you put that, bottomless pockets. Mine seem to be bottomless, but it happens to be a hole in my pocket. Thank you. Big head for Richard. That's great. I'd love to just augment. You're going to be happy to hear that the first thing I do recommend actually is, in fact, precisely something that has been shared just now from a couple of folks, which is what I'm going to show you really is the assessment, how to take a look at that if you're not completely familiar, if you want a way to show members how to do it. It's a little PDF that I created. It's called Toastmasters Level 1 Start to Finish for New Members. And it's what the title suggests. It was my effort to basically say everything you need to about Level 1 is in this PDF, literally from the moment you start in Toastmasters. At the intermediate advanced level, I guess I'm just going to barely touch on this, but there are a couple of resources which sort of allude to what a couple of folks were talking about. David Shehorn was talking about ways to sort of choose your path from this big picture perspective. I'll briefly show you, and I'm going to go right where Bob Hall suggested we go, which in fact is at the Pathways Learning Center. Thank you for that, Bob. The document that I want to show you to start actually is really at the top of the page. That's where I want to go first. It's at the beginning level because it's meant for someone that's kind of getting started. And here it is. It's just called Toastmasters Level 1 Start to Finish for new members. So we would click on that, of course. And the way that this document is set up, it's in chapters. So the table of contents, they're all clickable. This is literally, how do I create my Toastmasters.org account? Like they get this email, they don't know what to do. They just click on that and now they know what to do. It's got all the screenshots, everything you need to know. But here we go. Once you've created that account, then you can select the path. So we'd click on that chapter. And you can see step by step, it tells you everything you need to do. And then it will touch on the information, how to access the survey. Very briefly, all I can do is just barely touch on this because we really just need to do that version 2 big picture, I think. But this is back to the intermediate and advanced level reference materials. So we're scrolling down until we get there. There are 2 documents that I want to bring to your attention. This one is just called the Pathways Paths and Products Catalog. And it includes every path, every project in all 11 paths. And what you'll see in there is the selection of paths to get started. I think we talked about presentation mastery at some point tonight. So you would click on that path and it's got the whole thing in one page. And each one of these projects is clickable. So you could click on the icebreaker for a description of that. And I think this is that big picture point of view, but now the question of how do we differentiate between paths that we might choose? You know, how do we know the difference? And this is a little document that I created. It's just called Path Differentiation by Required Projects. And it splits it up into categories, as David Shehorn was talking about. And I'll let you kind of play with this, but I'm just going to make it a little bigger so you can see it. The way that this works is I just wrote out the required projects and I defined the choice by the required project in level 5. So it's split up into public speaking, then into light, moderate, or strong leadership. And that's really about the time commitment and the things that are involved to accomplish that. For example, public speaking, engaging humor, and as we mentioned, I think really this is probably number 1 for someone that just wants maximum flexibility, wants it to be like the old communication manual. This is the one, presentation mastery. And the required project in this case is prepare to speak professionally. Off the top of my head, I believe it's you give a presentation up to 45 minutes. Of course, you want to do a good job with this, but however long it takes you to form a 45-minute speech and deliver that is how long it takes you to do your most involved project. And then accordingly, the strong leadership is HPL, which is a high performance leadership project. That's the most involved project. You'll learn a ton. I remember doing my high performance leadership project. I can't even tell you how much I learned, but you have a guidance committee, which helps you plan. It really addresses the before, during, and after with lots of planning, collaboration, feedback. There's more that we need to go into, and I'm going to be sending an email to everybody asking if you would like a part 2 of the big picture, or we could simply go on to a new topic next month. But I really just get a sense from everybody here. There's a lot more that we want to share, express, and learn from each other, which I guess you could say a secondary aspect of the webinar thus far is about members helping members. It's so exciting to see that. What I do want to jump into a little bit here is sort of an open question period. So we're going to hand it over to Lori to help with the open Q&A moderating. And then we're going to come back for a few parting words. So who has a question in general? And Lori, I'll let you moderate, but I saw Kristen.
All right. Yes,
Yeah.
I do see Kristen raising her hand. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yes.
I wanted to know if if that page was linkable. So in other words, at the beginning, you talked about, it was Victoria's question, and you went through those pages, and then there was 4 rows, and I wondered if those were clickable or if that was just an image.
Now, which, I know we went over a few things. Was there a particular aspect that was it the website itself or something on the website?
I just remember four rows of topics, and I hated to interrupt, so I didn't.
Oh, sure. Was it on the recent one that I just shared or something else?
No, it was something earlier.
I see.
Like after you go down, it was you had to scroll down past the grids of squares. But maybe I'll play with it and I'll let you go on with someone else's question.
Yes, if I can answer it generally, everything that I've shared tonight is at the Pathways Learning Center. So it's all there. That was by design because I wanted you to be able to, you and everybody to be able to follow up and be able to take action on everything. So it's completely self-contained. Everything that we're doing and talking about is available at the Pathways Learning Center. I suspect it's probably in the intermediate/advanced reference materials, in which case it's about 1/2 to 3/4 down the page. And then you'll see all those document names. If you think of something more specific, please email me as well. I'll be following up. But does that help get you down the road?
Sure. I'll be looking at if I can retrace your steps, and then I'll do a screenshot and ask you.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Kristen,
Thank you.
Kristen, by chance, was it when he showed the different paths, all the different the names of the paths?
My mind.
Because there was about 4 of them across.
Yeah, there's about 4 of them across.
I think that's it, Dave.
Okay.
And again, I don't want to presume and take up a huge amount of time, but I will say again, it's all available at that section, and I definitely want to help you with that. Can we talk offline about that in the email? You'll get my email address. Is that acceptable?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks. Excellent. Wonderful. And Nate put in the link for the Pathways Learning Center as well. Thank you, Nate. It looks like Lori, who's next?
Val is next. Val Wilkinson.
Great. Hi, Val.
Sorry. My question is, when as a VPE and a base camp manager, how can you actually track all the members' speech or where they are on their path? You can, when they're in dual clubs, so you can only actually see or access what they're showing for your club. You cannot see what they've done in another club. So it's very hard if they work on one path and one club, that's fine. But often they do a speech here and a speech there, and they're asked to be a test speaker somewhere else. So they do that, and they've given that to that club over there. So it's actually very difficult to ascertain exactly where they are on their path so that you can assist them to move forward and not stagnate.
Yeah, great, sophisticated question. The most complex individual, let's start there and work backwards if we need to, which is basically, what if you have a member that's not only in multiple paths, but multiple clubs? And what is your role as VPE? I will say this, the way that it is designed within, Club Central, and when you log in as a Basecamp manager in particular, they do set it up so that the speeches they were given credit for in your club are included in their Basecamp. And I think the implication of that is they do want to put some of the responsibility on the member themselves, I suppose. In other words, your responsibility, or my responsibility as a VPE, is to help them with their club speeches that they've done with me or want to give credit. For example, I'm doing this presentation today and I'll give credit to my club. However, of course, I'm not at my club. So it's a much easier scenario if you think about someone in multiple paths, same club. Different club, that's going to be your call, of course. But if you really want to go the extra mile for that person, what you could do then is ask your member to print out their educational achievement report within their own profile through toastmasters.org would be a suggestion. Now, again, that is the most complex scenario. That's one place you can start. The other place to go is, now, again, we're back to club presentations, but PJ earlier talked about using free Toast Host. Do you happen to use that? I'm not going to explain it if you don't
Yes.
use. Oh, you do?
Okay.
Okay, great. The member role reports would be excellent, but again, this is really limited to your club. If you want to reach out beyond your club, it's going to probably need to take place with them printing out their educational achievements in their profile.
Mhm.
Fun
It's very
question. No.
difficult. We just recently had a member who wanted all these awards, completion awards, approved as a base camp manager, but I actually had no knowledge of him doing the work. I didn't have any evidence that he'd actually done all these speeches, but you can only imagine that he couldn't have triggered the report to be sent to be approved unless he had said that he'd done this work and put it into his base camp, into his path.
And I guess I want to follow up with that a little bit on the fact that, now, have you, as a Basecamp manager, been able to log in and click on his or her paths in learning to view their progress that way?
You can, but you can still only see what they have acknowledged for your club. You can't see what they've done in another club.
And then my next question would be, other than just wanting to be a great human being and say, hey, let me help you out the best I can, the purpose comes to mind. In other words, why does he want you to know that if in fact he's not wanting to give your credit to your club? In other words, I'm trying to figure out the purpose of this. And I think the reason I mention that is because as this is designed, like, why did the big picture is something I'm thinking about here. Why did Toastmasters design it that way? Because they don't want that cross-pollination, if you will. But not to say we can't help each other and learn from each other, of course. But is there a purpose that you would wanting to be accomplishing in relation to your role as VPE with him in your club? In other words, he shouldn't be saying, I want this award, but I don't have any proof. Well, the proof would be, in fact, in the Basecamp that is available. In other words, he needs to talk with the other club if he wants credit in that other club, in which case the proof is in their pudding that they can see when they log in as a Basecamp manager in that club.
So we don't actually know what other clubs he was involved with. It's very difficult. It is very, very difficult. But anyway, I can see time's running out. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful question. If I were to give you one piece of advice, I would inquire with him to say, please print out your education achievement report. I think that would be an excellent place to get started.
That's good. Thank you. Yes.
Great. Excellent. And then as well, evaluation forms are always helpful if he's comfortable sharing that. Now, I feel really bad. We're 2 minutes out by 8 o'clock and our program quality director has announcements. Is there anything that we could save for part 2? And I just want to be upfront. If you just simply have to ask it, please do. If we can, hold it off for part 2 or email. I don't see any hands up. I don't mean to put any
Dave,
pressure.
This is Renee Taylor. I just want to encourage everyone to go to the Pathway Learning Center. Just play around there. Just scroll. Just lollygag around. Just hang out there and get comfortable with it. That's all.
Is that on D7 or is it on Toastmasters International?
D7.
Just want to say again, it's been great sharing with you all tonight, and I'm so appreciative of the team. We have both Lori, David Shehorn helping me out tonight, both as Zoom master and chat master. Big hand for the team, if we could. Back to you, Madam Presiding Officer.
All right, thank you. And we officially adjourn the meeting.